Shwmai pawb. Hello everybody. Welcome back to My Wild Welsh Garden. Well, we've had about a week of really warm, sunny weather, and I do have to say that the garden has just loved it. It's growing and flowering and buzzing, and it's a lovely evening. So I'm sitting here in my favourite seat in the garden, just as evening is starting. And I am sitting next to the comfrey, and there are some bumblebees, so I am sitting here accompanied by the sound of buzzing. And then I just noticed that there are some ants going up and down the very, very thin trunk, because it's still very young, of this little cherry tree here. And I wondered, there's one running down, several running up, and I wondered what all that was about. And then I looked at the leaves here, and of course they're full of aphids, black fly, and that's what the ants are feeding on. They're feeding on the honeydew that the aphids excrete and taking it back to their nest. So down there is what I think is a hairy-footed flower bee. And I realise now that I probably have seen them before. I did think I'd never seen one, but I probably have seen them before. I just assumed that it was a rather rapidly flying bumblebee. But I managed to take some photographs yesterday, and I put them onto iNaturalist, and I've had them confirm that that's what she is. I haven't seen any males, but then, I wouldn't realise that it was a male that I was looking at. I'm sure I would just assume that it was a bumblebee. Honeysuckle is flowering in the hedge, and it just looks lovely. Even from a distance you can see it. This was here when I came, but it was over in the corner and you couldn't see it, and I wanted to see it from the house. So I dug it up and took a cutting and planted it there, and it's taken this long, 5 years, to grow this big. But I think it's worth it. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and longer with more and more flowers and smell even more lovely. It doesn't smell at this time of night. The best time is first thing in the morning, and then it just really smells lovely. And I have another honeysuckle which is growing up the arch outside the polytunnel and growing along the top of the shed, and that smells fabulous in the morning as well. And I grew that from a cutting of a honeysuckle that we had on our allotment for many years, and that was grown from a cutting that my dad had in his garden. So yeah, it's a lot of family connections there. Well, it looks like the sparrows have decided to nest in the swift box. It's been really very warm this afternoon, and I came out to do a fit count, and there didn't appear to be any insects at all, just a couple of honeybees. But it's now early evening, maybe about 6 o'clock, and it does look like it's teeny tiny beetle day in the garden. The raspberries are flowering. These are the autumn raspberries that are now all summer raspberries, but no bees on them. The Angelica has just come into flower, and I think there's a couple of honeybees up there. It's way taller than I am. And the apple blossom is fully out. So I may even get some apples this year. It'll be the first time. And I have some hawthorn blossom. It's the Welsh Puppies are all coming out now. The Welsh Poppy, or Pabi Cymreig, is usually yellow or orange, but I seem to have a few this year that are sort of yellowy orange. They look quite unusual. And there are a lot of these geraniums. I call them pop-up geraniums because they just pop up. And I really don't know where they came from, whether they were here when I came or whether I brought them with me. I could have sowed some seeds, but I really, really don't remember. There are a lot of Granny's bonnets in the orchard. I've got so many different shades of blue and pink and purple and combinations. It's just lovely. What I will do, because these are such prolific self-seeders, is as soon as they've finished flowering, I'll cut them right down and try and avoid a complete Granny's bonnet takeover of the garden. The red campion has started flowering. This is a wildflower, a native plant that seems to like it here in the sort of semi-shade of the summer house. Last time I just mentioned about the wildflowers, the native plants that I've been planting out. These are bird's foot trefoil that I grew from seed last year. And I've been thinking about how to make pots of native plants and wildflowers. So I'll just show you what I've done. So in my chimney pots, I normally use bedding plants. But this year, this is what I've done with the bird's foot trefoil. I've put, I think, maybe 4 or 5 plants in there. And this is one of those strawberry planters that you can't grow strawberries in because they just dry out so quickly and the poor strawberries don't do anything. Last year I planted it up with sempervivums and it looked lovely in the summer, but they really didn't like all the wet in the winter. So I've put bird's foot trefoil in it. I've put 1 in each sort of a side pocket and 3, I think, in the top. So it's a little experiment and we'll see what happens during the year, and I'll let you know. The bird's foot trefoil is the larval food plant, I believe, of the common blue butterfly. There's plenty of bird's foot trefoil around at the sides of the road verges, but of course what happens is the poor butterflies lay their eggs on the plants, and then the council come along and mow it all down, and that's the end of them. And this azalea on the corner here is coming out, and I did just see a bumblebee, yes. Now these are much smaller than the bumblebees that I've been showing you, this one. And I think that's because this one is now a worker. So the queen has found somewhere to make a nest, has laid some eggs which have hatched, and these are the workers that are just coming out. And the forget-me-nots are still making this sort of blue haze around the garden, although there's not nearly as many insects on them as there were. There's still the odd honeybee. In the centre of each of the little blue flowers, there's a little tiny white or yellow circle. And I think what happens is when the flower has been pollinated, it turns from yellow to white, which kind of tells the bee not to bother, that there's no nectar left. Kind of like putting a no fuel sign up outside the petrol station. And quite a few of the flowers have gone over and are turning into seed heads already. So I think these flowers are coming to the end of their usefulness, really, as far as the pollinators are concerned. This is a lovely thing. This is a green manure that I sowed in this tub last year, just because I couldn't think what else to do with it, and it's just sat there and now it's flowering. But it's really very pretty. It's difficult filming straight into the sun. But this is just outside my summer house. So thanks for watching. Thanks for visiting me again in my wild Welsh garden. And hope to see you again in the future. Bye. Hwyl fawr.